A stone face woven from leaves stares silently from a cathedral wall. Is this the ghost of a pagan god or a secret Christian saint? For centuries, this mysterious symbol known as the Green Man has blurred the line between nature worship and divine faith, and today we will uncover his tangled history. By the end of this journey, you will understand how one enigmatic carving can hold two completely opposing meanings. We will explore why medieval churches were covered with these leafy faces and investigate the ancient primal power they might represent. When you see a face made of forest, what story do you think it is trying to tell? That silent face woven from leaves has a name, the Green Man. This is not a single, specific portrait, but a type of carving, an archetype recognized by a few key features. At its heart is a human face, almost always male, that seems to be in a mysterious, symbiotic relationship with the plant world. Sometimes the face itself is composed of leaves, the skin replaced by oak or hawthorn, the hair twisting into vines. In other, more dramatic versions, known as a disgorging head, the vegetation appears to burst from his mouth, flowing out in a lush, unending cascade. This is the foliate head, a term that simply means leaf-covered. You find these enigmatic figures peering down from the stone and woodwork of medieval churches and cathedrals, often in the most unexpected places, nestled among roof bosses, carved into misericords or framing doorways. They also appear in more secular settings, gracing the halls of old manors and castles across Britain and Europe. So when you look up and see that face, you are not just seeing a decoration. You are witnessing a form of ancient magic, a human form dissolving into the wild, untamed force of nature itself. What kind of mind creates such a powerful fusion of man and forest? That face of leaves and vine is far too ancient to have been born in a medieval workshop. To many, this is the undeniable echo of a much older, wilder god. Before churches dotted the landscape, the forests of Europe were seen as sacred, alive with spirits of tree and stone. It is here, in the deep pagan past, that we may find the Green Man's true ancestors. Consider Cernunnos, the Celtic horned god, often depicted with the antlers of a great stag. He was a lord of animals, a guardian of the forest, and a symbol of fertile, untamed nature. His image speaks of a power that is both creative and fearsome, the very essence of the wild wood. Then there are the gods of revelry and rebirth from the classical world. Dionysus in Greece, known as Bacchus to the Romans, was a god of the vine, of ecstatic celebration, and of the life force that surges through all living things. His followers believed he died and was reborn each year, just as the vineyard withers in winter and blooms again in spring. Another likely forebear is Silvanus, the Roman god of the woods themselves. His name means of the forest, and he protected its boundaries and its wild inhabitants. What connects all these disparate figures? They are all embodiments of the great, unending cycle. Life bursts forth from decay. Death is not an end, but a necessary step toward new growth. The Green Man, with foliage sprouting from his very being, is a perfect picture of this eternal truth. He is the life of the forest given a human face. So when a medieval stone carver shaped a leafy face for a cathedral, was he secretly honoring the old gods of the land? Or was he simply using a powerful, ancient symbol that everyone understood on a primal level? The answer may be more complex than a simple choice between one faith and another. Yet within the solemn silence of the church, this wild face takes on a profoundly different meaning. For the medieval Christian, nature was not a separate pagan power, but the first Bible, a sacred text written by the hand of God. Seen through this lens, the Green Man becomes a beautiful and orthodox symbol. He is a celebration of God's magnificent creation, a stone hymn to the lush, untamed beauty of the Garden of Eden before the fall. The foliage bursting from his mouth and eyes could represent the very breath of life given by the Creator, a visual prayer of gratitude for the forests and fields that sustained them. But the interpretation goes even deeper, touching the very core of Christian belief. Just as a seed must die in the ground to sprout anew, so too did Christ die and rise again. The green man, with life springing so vividly from a human form, becomes a powerful, silent sermon carved in stone. He is a metaphor for the resurrection itself, a promise that from the decay of the mortal body, a new, eternal life will flourish. This symbol taught a vital lesson to a largely illiterate population, showing them that faith, like the leaves sprouting from stone, can bring forth vibrant life from the most unlikely of places. So the same carving that whispers of a pagan god of the forest also proclaims the central miracle of the Christian faith. How can one image hold two such powerful, yet seemingly opposite, truths so effortlessly? Perhaps the most compelling evidence for this archetype's ancient power lies far from the European forests, with a 4,000-year-old face from the city of Uruk in Mesopotamia. Carved in stone, this figure, known as the Mesopotamian Green Man, displays a startlingly familiar visage. His entire head is composed of densely packed, overlapping leaves, and from his scalp sprout twin vines, each ending in a ripe pomegranate. This is not a god of the wild woods, but a symbol of fertility and the life-giving power of cultivated plants, a testament to the agricultural heart of that early civilization. The idea was clearly in the air, or perhaps deep in the human psyche. Centuries later, the artists of the Hellenistic world were carving foliate heads onto their temples and tombs, human faces subtly giving way to acanthus leaves, blurring the line between person and plant in a way that would feel instantly recognizable to a medieval mason. But the most direct precursor might be found on Roman sarcophagi, the ornate stone coffins of the wealthy. Here, among scenes of mythology and daily life, we frequently find masks of leaves and vines. These were not random decorations. Placed on a coffin, a leaf-masked face was a powerful symbol of hope, a silent prayer for rebirth. It spoke of the soul returning to the earth, not as an end, but as a seed waiting to burst forth into a new existence. This recurring image across millennia and cultures tells us something profound. The man made of leaves is not an invention of the Middle Ages, but a primordial symbol that has emerged independently across the globe. He is a deep-seated human response to the mysteries of life, death, and regeneration. So when he finally appears in the Christian church, he is not an intruder, but an old, familiar visitor, his meaning already etched into the collective human soul. The wildwood of Celtic myth offers one of the most vivid mirrors to the church's leafy face. This is a world where the forest itself is alive, and its spirit often takes human form. Consider the formidable Green Knight from the Arthurian tale of Sir Gawain. He arrives at King Arthur's court on New Year's Day, a colossal figure entirely green, from his skin and hair to his clothes and even his horse. He carries a massive, fearsome axe and proposes a chilling game. He will allow any knight to strike him once with the axe, on the condition that the Green Knight may return the blow in 1 year and 1 day. When the honorable Sir Gawain accepts the challenge and beheads the giant with a single blow, the story takes a truly supernatural turn. The Green Knight does not die. He simply stands, picks up his own head, and reminds Gawain of their appointment at the Green Chapel before riding away. This being is not merely a man who is green. He is the untamable, resilient, and cyclical power of nature itself. He cannot be killed by a sword, just as winter cannot destroy the promise of spring. His challenge is not just to Gawain's bravery, but to the entire court's understanding of a world where nature is not a passive resource, but a conscious, formidable force. Beyond this famous knight, the British and Irish landscapes are populated with similar entities. There is Jack in the Green, a leafy figure from English folk custom who is paraded in spring festivals to celebrate the return of fertility. There are the wild men of the wood, hairy, primal beings who represent the raw, uncivilized state of humanity living in harmony with the natural world. All these figures, from the chivalric Green Knight to the folkloric Jack, speak to the same deep understanding. They are the spirit of the wildwood, the personification of the life, death, and rebirth that governs the turning seasons. So when you see that foliate head in a church, you are not just looking at a Christian symbol or a pagan ghost. You are witnessing the enduring human need to give a face to the immense cyclical power that surrounds us all. How does this ancient, wild spirit find a home within the structured walls of faith? But the green man was rarely alone in his stone sanctuary. If we shift our gaze from the leafy faces, we often find another, even more startling figure carved into the very same church walls. This is the Sheila na gig, a crude and explicit carving of a woman pulling open her vulva. Her body is often skeletal, her expression a grotesque grimace. At first glance, she seems to be the green man's absolute opposite. He is a face of burgeoning life. She is a stark emblem of raw sexuality and physical decay. Yet their architectural proximity is no accident. They were frequently placed as complementary bookends to the same spiritual story, where the green man represents the fertile, masculine force of nature, the life that bursts forth from the soil. The Sheila na gig embodies the feminine gateway of birth and the inevitable return to the earth. She is a powerful, unsettling reminder that the same cycle of creation also contains dissolution. Together, they form a complete picture of existence. This duality appears elsewhere, too. Look for the enigmatic figure of the toadstone, where a toad, a creature long associated with poison and witchcraft, is shown sucking the head of a woman. Or the many carvings of the pelican in her piety, a bird pecking her own breast to feed her young with her blood. Each of these symbols, from the fertile Sheila to the self-sacrificing pelican, represents a different facet of the same profound mystery. They are not separate ideas competing for space on a church wall. They are parts of a single, unified whole, a medieval worldview that understood life and death, creation and decay, as two sides of the same sacred coin. The Church did not shy away from this complex truth. It carved it into its very stones, creating a silent, visual theology that spoke of the entire human experience, from the first breath to the final return to dust. Why would such an orthodox institution give space to these wild, primal images? So how did this wild, leafy spirit find his way into the heart of the Christian Church? The story begins to crystallize in stone around the 11th and 12th centuries. This was a time of profound architectural and spiritual transformation, the era of the great Romanesque and Gothic cathedrals. It is precisely within these massive, soaring structures that the green man begins to appear with startling frequency, carved into capitals, peering from corbels, and disgorging leaves from the heights of vaulted ceilings. His arrival was not a quiet, hidden infiltration. He was placed prominently, often in highly visible locations, suggesting his presence was not just tolerated, but actively commissioned by the church authorities. This widespread adoption presents a fascinating puzzle. Why would a seemingly pagan symbol, a face that whispers of ancient forest gods, be so openly embraced by an institution dedicated to a monotheistic faith? The answer is not one of secret pagan survival, but of brilliant theological repurposing. The church was building on a new, vast scale, and it needed a visual language that could speak to the hearts and minds of a population still deeply connected to the natural world. The old symbols of life, death, and rebirth were not erased. They were baptized, given a new Christian meaning that resonated with the old, primal understanding. The green man, a powerful emblem of nature's cyclical power, was perfectly suited to become a stone parable for the resurrection. He was a bridge, a way to make the profound mysteries of the new faith feel familiar and true, rooted in the very soil from which the people themselves had sprung. What does it tell us about faith itself when it chooses to build with the stones of the old world? High above the nave, a stonemason's chisel met stone, and a leafy face took form. These carvers were not anonymous laborers, but members of powerful, secretive guilds, and their work was often a complex language of its own. The masons who raised these cathedrals operated within a world of strict tradition and guarded knowledge. Their guilds were more than just trade unions. They were the keepers of sacred geometry, the masters of proportion, and the guardians of techniques passed from master to apprentice over generations. When a mason carved a green man, he was doing far more than following a pattern from a clerical sketchbook. This figure could have served as a kind of signature, a subtle mark of pride from an artist whose name would otherwise be lost to history. Just as a painter might hide a self-portrait in a corner of a vast fresco, a mason could embed his personal symbol, his leafy muse, into the very fabric of God's house. These carvings were also potent symbols of the mason's own craft and its deep connection to the natural world. Their primary material was stone, a substance born from the earth, and their work transformed this inert matter into vibrant, living forms. What better symbol for this alchemy than a human face blooming with foliage? The green man represented the ultimate act of creation, drawing life out of rock. He was the embodiment of their skill, a testament to their ability to make stone breathe and sprout. But what of the church's official stance? Did bishops and abbots explicitly commission these leafy faces, or did they simply look the other way? The truth likely lies in a quiet understanding. The clergy controlled the overarching theological themes, the grand narratives of saints and scripture. The fine details, the thousands of tiny carvings that filled the spandrels and roof bosses, were often left to the mason's own discretion and folk traditions. A bishop might approve a design for a capital showing the leaves of the tree of life, and the mason, drawing on the old stories that still lived in the countryside, would interpret that design as the face of the green man. It was a collaboration, sometimes conscious, sometimes unconscious, between high theology and grassroots belief. The green man's proliferation may not have been a secret pagan rebellion, but rather the natural expression of the artisans who spent their lives bridging the worlds of earth and spirit. Their hands shaped the stone, and in doing so, they gave enduring form to a symbol that spoke to both their faith and their craft. Some green men do not simply wear leaves, they speak them. The most dramatic version of this archetype is the disgorging head, where a thickly lush cascade of vines and foliage bursts directly from the mouth, as if the figure itself is the source of this unstoppable vegetative flow. This is no passive decoration, it is an act of profound expression. One compelling interpretation views this verdant torrent as the Word of God made manifest in nature. In this Christian reading, the leaves pouring forth are a silent sermon, the divine truth flowing from the mouth of the church itself, preaching the glory of creation to all who enter. It is the breath of life given visual form, a reminder that every oak and every blade of grass exists because God spoke it into being, yet this same image can be twisted into something far more primal and unsettling. What if the foliage is not holy speech, but the raw, untamed chaos of the wild? Imagine the disgorging head as a conduit, spewing the uncontrollable force of the forest directly into the ordered, sanctified space of the church. This is nature not as a gentle creation, but as a furious, regenerative power that knows nothing of human law or divine hierarchy. It is the wildwood reclaiming its own, a symbolic breach where the civilized world is invaded by the very chaos it sought to wall out. This duality is the essence of the symbol's power. The same carving can represent both divine order and primal chaos, the tamed word and the untamable life force. It asks a deeply unsettling question. When the green man opens his mouth, is he reciting a prayer, or is he roaring the forest back into existence? This urge to fuse the human form with the vitality of plants is a story written across the entire world, not just the forests of Europe. Far from the Gothic cathedrals under the dazzling sun of Andalusia, the same mysterious motif quietly flourishes. Within the intricate stucco and tilework of the Alhambra Palace in Spain, a masterpiece of Islamic architecture, You can find exquisite foliate faces peering from the walls. Here, the depiction of living creatures is often avoided in religious contexts, yet these vegetative heads appear in secular spaces, their features elegantly stylized, their beards and hair dissolving into perfectly symmetrical vines and blossoms. This is not a green man of the wildwood, but one of geometric order, a reflection of paradise as a perfected, lush garden. The symbol's journey continues eastward. In the ancient temples of India, you encounter the Kurtamukha, the face of glory. This is a fierce, protective deity often carved above doorways, a disembodied head disgorging lush foliage from its mouth in a vibrant, unending stream. While sometimes fearsome, the Kurtamukha is not a demon. It is a guardian, and the vegetation flowing from it symbolizes the abundant life and prosperity it bestows upon those who enter with reverence. Similarly, in Buddhist art, you find serene figures like the Buddha himself, sometimes depicted in a posture of meditation, while a sacred bodhi tree sprouts and grows from his shoulders, a direct fusion of enlightened being and life-giving nature. These are not coincidences. They are independent discoveries of the same profound truth. From the Celtic wildwood to the Islamic paradise garden and the Hindu temple, the human mind, when contemplating the mystery of life, repeatedly arrives at the same powerful image. It is the human form blossoming, a face becoming a forest, a body becoming a vine. This is not about a single god or a single faith. It is about a universal human fascination with our own place within the great, green, breathing world. What does it say about us that so many cultures, separated by vast oceans and centuries, all felt compelled to carve this same face of leaves and life? This ancient symbol, however, would soon face a storm of puritanical fury. The Protestant Reformation swept across Europe with a radical new vision of faith, one that viewed the ornate carvings and stained glass of the old churches not as beautiful aids to worship, but as dangerous idols. To the Reformers, the leafy face of the green man was not a bridge to understanding, but a superstitious relic of a corrupted past. It was popish nonsense, a pagan holdover that had no place in a purified religion based on scripture alone. This theological shift unleashed waves of iconoclasm, the deliberate destruction of religious imagery. Mobs of fervent believers, often encouraged by their preachers, stormed into cathedrals and parish churches armed with hammers and chisels. Their mission was to cleanse God's house of what they saw as blasphemous stone. They sought out and defaced statues of saints, smashed stained glass windows, and hacked away at the mysterious foliate heads peering down from the walls. Countless green men were mutilated beyond recognition, their leafy features scarred and broken, their silent mouths shattered to stop them from speaking their verdant truths. The creation of new carvings came to an abrupt halt. The master masons who once infused their work with this ancient symbol now had to conform to a new, stark aesthetic of plain, whitewashed walls and empty niches. The green man, who had thrived for centuries in the shadowy corners of the church, was suddenly cast out into the cold. He did not disappear entirely, of course. He retreated. He survived in remote rural churches that escaped the worst of the destruction, and he lingered in the folk memory of the countryside, in the May Day celebrations and the stories of the wild man of the woods. But his prominent public role was over. The great cycle of life, death, and rebirth that he so perfectly represented was pushed to the margins, deemed too primal, too earthy, for a faith that was moving toward intellectual abstraction. How does a symbol so deeply rooted in the human psyche survive when its official home is torn away? Cast out from the churches, the green man did not die. He simply went aground, waiting in the quiet of forgotten folklore and the overgrown hedgerows of the countryside. His triumphant return began not with theologians, but with poets. The Romantic movement of the 19th century turned its back on cold industrial reason and cast a longing gaze back toward the wild, the natural, and the medieval past. Writers like William Wordsworth and John Keats were not looking for Christian parables in nature. They were seeking the soul of nature itself. In their verses, the forest was no longer just timber. It was a living, breathing entity, a place of sublime mystery and ancient power. They resurrected the spirit of the wildwood, and in doing so, they created the perfect cultural conditions for the green man to re-emerge. Artists and illustrators followed, filling their canvases and books with lush, dreamlike scenes of tangled forests and leafy deities, subtly preparing the world to see that familiar face once more. This was not yet the Green Man by name, but he was most certainly there in spirit, a phantom growing stronger with every ode to a nightingale or every painting of a mythical woodland. The symbol was stirring from its long slumber, waiting only for someone to give it back its name. That someone was a remarkable woman named Lady Raglan. In the spring of 1939, she published an article in the journal Folklore that would change everything. She looked at the foliate heads in her local church and saw a connection everyone else had missed. She linked these stone faces to the leafy characters from the folk plays and May Day celebrations that had survived for centuries in English villages. In these rituals, a man entirely covered in a framework of leaves and flowers would dance through the streets, a clear embodiment of the spirit of spring. Lady Raglan argued that the church carvings and the folk figure were one and the same, and she gave this unified archetype the name we all know today, the Green Man. It was a brilliant piece of synthesis. By connecting the stone to the soil, the cathedral to the carnival, she re-mythologized the symbol for a modern world. She gave a scattered collection of carvings a collective identity and a story. Her term stuck instantly, providing a powerful, evocative label for an image that had waited centuries for one. The Green Man was officially reborn, no longer a misunderstood relic, but a recognized character in the great drama of our cultural imagination. What does it mean that it took a modern folklorist to finally name an ancient face? Lady Raglan gave him a name, and the modern world gave him a new sanctuary. In the 20th and 21st centuries, the Green Man found a vibrant home in the re-emerging spiritual paths of Wicca, Druidry, and modern paganism. Here, he is not a cryptic carving or a folk memory, but a living deity actively honored and revered. These nature-based faiths, seeking to reconnect with the pre-Christian spiritual landscape of Europe, recognized the Green Man instantly. They saw in his leafy face the embodiment of the sacred masculine, a force not of domination, but of generative, fertile life. In many Wiccan traditions, he is celebrated as the horned god, the consort and beloved of the great goddess. This horned god is not the demonic figure of medieval fear, but a powerful, gentle guardian of the wild world. He is the lord of the forest, the master of the hunt, and the king who willingly sacrifices himself at the harvest so that life may continue. His horns are not a sign of evil, but a crown of natural authority, like the antlers of a stag. He represents the sun's vital energy, the potent force that stirs the seed in the soil and drives the great cycle of the seasons. For modern practitioners, the Green Man is a direct, tangible connection to this divine masculine energy. His image is placed on altars, invoked in rituals, and honored during seasonal festivals, especially at the vibrant peak of summer. He is a god who is physically present in every leaf, every root, and every animal. This reclamation fills a profound void, offering a spiritual vision where masculinity is intrinsically linked to life-giving power and ecological wisdom, rather than conquest. So the ancient symbol, once baptized by the church and later cast out, has been fully re-mythologized. He is no longer just a metaphor in stone, but a vital, breathing presence in the spiritual lives of thousands. How does a symbol, once silenced, find its voice again in the human heart? The world of modern literature became a new, fertile ground for this ancient spirit. As the Green Man stepped out of the stone and into the story, he found powerful new voices to speak for him. J.R.R. Tolkien, a scholar deeply versed in the old northern myths, populated his Middle-earth with beings who were clear descendants of the wildwood god. The Ents, the ancient shepherds of the trees, are the green man's power and patience made manifest. They are the forest itself, slow to anger but unstoppable when roused, their very language a deep, rumbling echo of roots in rock. And then there is the more enigmatic Tom Bombadil, a being who defies all categorization. He is the master of his own small, untamed country, a spirit of the land so ancient and fundamental that even the One Ring holds no power over him. He is not just in nature, he is nature, a cheerful, inscrutable embodiment of a world that exists for its own sake, untouched by the struggles of good and evil. Tolkien was not alone in this literary reforestation. Authors like Susan Cooper, in her Dark is Rising sequence, brought the Green Man directly into contemporary Britain. Here he is the wild magic, a force that stands beside the more structured old magic, representing the untamed, unpredictable power of the earth that must be respected and reckoned with. Charles de Lint, a pioneer of urban fantasy, wove the Green Man into the very fabric of the modern city. In his stories, the spirit of the wildwood does not live in a distant forest, but in a forgotten city park or a tangled vacant lot, reminding us that nature is not a separate place we visit, but a persistent presence that endures even in the heart of concrete and steel. This literary journey culminates in the rise of eco-fiction, a genre where the Green Man evolves from a character into a central archetype. He becomes the symbol of the earth itself, responding to the ravages of industry and human neglect. In these stories, the disgorging head is no longer a medieval mystery, but a metaphor for the planet pushing back, its vital, chaotic force reasserting itself against the artificial order of civilization. The leafy face in the cathedral was a question. The one in the novel is often an answer, a warning, and a plea. What happens when the stories we tell ourselves about nature finally change? Our screens have become the new cathedrals, and the Green Man now haunts them with a flickering digital life. In the shadowy corners of historical dramas, he often appears as a subtle background detail, a stone face glimpsed on a castle wall or a church pillar, silently anchoring the scene in a palpable pagan past. This visual shorthand instantly tells the audience they are in a world where the old magic still lingers just beneath the surface of organized religion. Yet in fantasy and horror, this archetype steps directly into the spotlight, and his portrayal splits dramatically into two distinct paths. One path depicts him as a terrifying force of nature's wrath. Think of the vengeful forest spirits in films like The Ritual or the Green Knight adaptation, where the wildwood is not a friendly place but a sentient, malevolent entity. These green men are ancient, immoral, and formidable, their power rooted in a simple, chilling logic. They do not hate humanity, they simply prioritize the forest, and they will dismantle any person or village that threatens the natural balance. This portrayal taps into our deep-seated fear of nature's indifference and the terrifying price of ecological transgression, but the other path reveals a gentler guardian. In series like Merlin or Britannia, the Green Man archetype often appears as a druid or a wise old man of the woods, a keeper of ancient wisdom who guides the hero and protects the sacred groves. He is the spirit of the land itself, a benevolent force aligned with those who show respect. This version reassures us that nature is not our enemy, but a powerful ally we have foolishly forgotten. So what is the real impact of these conflicting screen portrayals? They have effectively taken an obscure medieval carving and transformed it into a living, breathing character in our collective mythology. For millions of viewers, their first and only encounter with the Green Man is through these stories. The symbol is no longer locked in a history book. It is an active participant in our modern narratives about ecology, faith, and fear. The screen has given him a new voice, and through it, he continues to ask his ancient, pressing question: is the wild world a sanctuary we must protect, or a judge that will one day hold us to account? He was not always silent stone. In the smoke and laughter of a village square, the Green Man danced. Every spring, across the towns and villages of Britain, The same ancient spirit that was carved into cathedrals stepped down from the walls and walked among the people. This was the Jack in the Green, a living, breathing performance of the very same power. A man would be completely enclosed within a towering, conical framework of wicker and fresh foliage, a walking, dancing bower of green so dense that only his boots could be seen moving below. He was a moving grove, a perambulating thicket, led through the streets by cheering crowds in a riotous celebration of May Day. This was not a somber religious ceremony, but a vibrant, chaotic folk play, a direct descendant of the oldest rituals meant to wake the earth from its winter sleep. The Jack was the spirit of the new spring, the embodiment of the returning vegetation. His dance was a kind of sympathetic magic, an act meant to encourage the crops to grow, the trees to leaf, and the land to burst into fertility. He was the medieval stonemason's foliate head brought to life, not with a chisel, but with holly and ivy and the sweat of a human performer. The parallel is unmistakable. Both the static church carving and the dancing village figure represent the same profound archetype, the human form as a vessel for the wild, generative force of nature. One was a sermon in stone, the other a celebration in the streets, but where the church sought to channel this power into a Christian narrative, the folk festival let it run wild and untamed, a direct line to a pre-Christian understanding of the world. Why would these two expressions, one so orderly and the other so chaotic, exist side by side for centuries? They were two different languages telling the same essential story of life, death, and rebirth. The church told it with theology, the village with revelry. The Jack in the Green was the green man's folk memory, a performative echo that refused to die, proving that the symbol's true roots were not in architecture, but in the soil itself. Perhaps this symbol's most enduring home is not in stone or story, but within the human mind itself. The Swiss psychologist Carl Jung would have seen the green man not as a historical artifact, but as a fundamental expression of our shared psychic inheritance, an archetype emerging from the collective unconscious. Jung believed that beneath our personal minds lies a deep, universal layer of the psyche, a vast reservoir of latent images and patterns common to all humanity. These are the archetypes, the primordial blueprints for the most profound figures and stories we encounter, from the wise old man and the great mother to the hero and the trickster. The green man fits perfectly into this framework. He is a powerful embodiment of the self, the central archetype that represents the unified, whole, and integrated personality. More specifically, he aligns with the anthropos, the primal human, a symbol of the original, undivided state of being that is in perfect harmony with the cosmos. When we see a human face blossoming into a forest, we are witnessing a visual representation of the ultimate goal of Jungian psychology, a process called individuation. This is the lifelong journey of acknowledging and integrating the disparate, often hidden parts of our psyche into a cohesive whole. The green man is the ultimate symbol of this integration. He shows us a state where the conscious ego is not separate from the wild, untamed, and instinctual forces of the unconscious, represented by the surging, chaotic vegetation. He is the civilized mind and the primal forest, fused into one being. His leaves are the flourishing of a psyche that has made peace with its own deepest, most natural roots. To encounter this archetype, whether in a dream, a vision, or a carving on a wall, is to receive a profound invitation. It is a call to reconnect with the instinctual wisdom we have lost, to allow the raw, creative energy of our own inner wilderness to sprout and grow, transforming us in the process. The path to wholeness, Jung might say, is not about pruning back the wild vines of the unconscious, but about learning to wear them as a crown. This ancient face of leaves now stares out at a world in peril. After his long journey through folklore and faith, the green man has been reborn as a potent icon for our planet's most urgent cause. His resurgence in the 20th and 21st centuries is not as a character from old stories, but as a symbol for the global environmental movement. He represents a profound call to remember what so many modern societies have forgotten: our intrinsic and inescapable connection to the living earth. Where corporate logos and political slogans might fail, this primal image speaks directly to the soul. The foliage sprouting from his mouth is no longer just a symbol of life, but a plea for its preservation. He has become the silent guardian of ancient woodlands, the face of river conservation projects, and the mascot for community gardens. Environmental groups adopt his likeness because he transcends language and politics, embodying the very essence of the natural world we are striving to protect. He is not a god to be worshipped from a distance, but a mirror held up to humanity, showing us that we are not separate from nature, we are a part of it. His image asks a simple, haunting question: if we allow the forest to die, what part of our own soul dies with it? This symbol champions a shift from domination to stewardship, urging us to fight against the tide of ecological destruction, not out of fear, but out of a renewed sense of kinship. To see the green man is to remember a time when the forest was not a resource to be managed, but a relative to be respected. In an age of concrete and code, his leafy gaze calls us home. Rosslyn Chapel holds a silent congregation of over 100 green men. Nestled in the Scottish lowlands, this 15th century marvel is a veritable encyclopedia of foliate heads, each one a unique character in a stone drama. They peer from every conceivable surface, from the delicate pendants of the Lady Chapel to the dark corners of the Apprentice Pillar. Some are serene and human-like, their features framed by gentle oak leaves. Others are wild, almost demonic, with foliage erupting from their gaping mouths in a chaotic spray of stone vines. This density of carvings transforms the chapel from a simple place of worship into a profound meditation on the relationship between humanity and the natural world, a theme literally carved into its very bones. Traveling south into England, the chapter house of Southwell Minster offers a different kind of masterpiece. Here, the carving known as the Leaves of Southwell is celebrated not for its ferocity, but for its breathtaking botanical accuracy. The stonemasons of the 13th century rendered oak, hawthorn, ivy, and maple with the precision of naturalists, their leaves and tendrils so lifelike they seem to flutter in the still church air. The green man faces here are often more integrated, their features subtly emerging from the lush vegetation rather than dominating it. It feels less like a man wearing leaves and more like the leaves are gently forming a man, a quiet, symbiotic union of spirit and flora. Crossing the Channel into France, the green man takes on a new identity. In the soaring Gothic cathedrals of Chartres and Amiens, he is often more architectural, more a part of the structure itself. His foliage flows seamlessly into the stone ribs of vaults or frames the sacred scenes in stained glass. The French examples can feel more refined, sometimes more severe, as if the wildness of the archetype has been carefully channeled into the disciplined lines of high Gothic design. Meanwhile, in Germany, particularly in the woodwork of churches and market towns, the green man often appears with a distinctly folkloric charm. These faces can be playful, even grotesque, with exaggerated features and abundant, curling leaves that speak to a more earthy, popular tradition. This geographical journey reveals a stunning truth. The green man is not a single, monolithic symbol, but a living idea that adapted to its local soil. From the dense, mystical gathering in Rosslyn to the naturalistic perfection in Southwell and the structured elegance of French Gothic, each region interpreted this primal face through the lens of its own landscape, its own stone, and its own unique relationship with the wild. Why would the same essential face look so different from one valley to the next? Yet for all the green men peering from the stones, another face is far more rarely seen. Tucked away in the shadowy corners of a few churches, you might find her, the green woman. She is a female foliate head, a mysterious sister to the male archetype, her features similarly woven from leaves and vines. Her scarcity in the historical record is itself a profound statement. In a world of carving dominated by male masons and patriarchal theology, the wild, generative force of nature was almost universally given a masculine face. The discovery of a green woman, therefore, feels like uncovering a secret, a quiet challenge to our assumptions. What does it mean when nature's fertility is portrayed as feminine? She embodies a different aspect of the same great cycle, where the green man often represents the external, active force of nature, the sun's power that pushes the shoot from the soil. The green woman can be seen as the internal, receptive power of the earth itself. She is the soil that receives the seed, the dark, nurturing womb from which all life ultimately springs. She represents immanence, the idea that the divine is present within the natural world, not as a lord ruling from above, but as a mother giving birth from within. Her leaves are not just a crown, but a direct extension of her being. In carvings like the one in the Norman church at Kilpeck, England, a female head is framed by long, braided tresses that effortlessly transform into thick, curling vines. She is not being consumed by the vegetation, she is the vegetation. She is a complete fusion, suggesting that the creative power of the earth is inherently feminine, a force of profound and patient creation. Her presence, though rare, expands the symbol's meaning exponentially. She tells us that the spirit of the wildwood is not one gender, but a balance of both. It is the sacred marriage of the green man and the green woman, the sky father and the earth mother, whose union brings forth the entire living world. Why has her story been so much harder to hear? This same wild, vegetative force that animates the green man also appears in the cryptic manuscripts of the alchemists, where it is known as the green lion. In the secret language of alchemy, the green lion is not a creature but a powerful symbol for the prima materia, the raw, unrefined substance that lies at the beginning of the great work. It is the chaotic, foundational matter of the universe, brimming with latent life and potential, yet utterly unformed. The green lion is often depicted devouring the sun, a stunning image that represents this primal, vegetative energy consuming and digesting the conscious self, the ego. This is the essential first step in the alchemical process, the putrefactio or blackening, where the old identity must dissolve into a formless state. The connection to our leafy-faced archetype is profound and direct. The green man, with his disgorging mouth spewing forth the untamed chaos of the forest, is a perfect representation of this very prima materia. He is the raw, uncut power of nature, the unrefined life force that the alchemist must learn to work with. His wildness is not a flaw, but the very source of his power. The alchemical journey is one of transformation, of taking this base green state and subjecting it to a series of purifications, separations, and recombinations. Through this arduous spiritual labor, the dense green vitality of the lion is gradually refined, its chaotic energy is focused, its latent spirit is liberated, until finally it is transmuted into the ultimate goal, the philosopher's stone. This legendary substance was said to grant immortality and turn base metals into gold, but its true meaning is spiritual. The philosopher's stone is the enlightened, perfected self, the individual who has successfully integrated their own primal, unconscious nature with their conscious mind. So when you see the green man in a church, you are not just looking at a nature spirit or a Christian parable. You are witnessing a universal symbol for the starting point of every great transformation. He is the unworked stone, the wild forest of the soul that must be entered and understood before any lasting change can occur. His leafy face asks the alchemist in all of us a simple, daunting question. Are you willing to be consumed by the green, to let your old self dissolve, so that something more refined and golden can eventually emerge? Yet with so many stories swirling around this leafy face, it is vital to untangle the facts from the persistent fictions. One of the most common myths is that the green man is purely and simply a pagan god in hiding, a secret symbol of a pre-Christian faith that stubbornly survived within the church walls. While his connection to ancient nature spirits is undeniable, This view is far too simplistic. The historical evidence shows that the green man flourished for centuries with the apparent blessing of the church, carved in prominent locations for all to see. This was not a covert act of rebellion by pagan masons, but rather a complex process of adoption and reinterpretation. The church was incredibly adept at absorbing powerful local symbols and baptizing them with new Christian meanings. The green man did not sneak into the cathedral, he was invited, his primal energy redirected to illustrate the resurrection and the glory of God's creation. Another frequent misconception is that he represents a single specific deity with a known name and a unified mythology. We often hear him called the Celtic god Cernunnos or the Greek god Dionysus, but the green man is not one of these individual gods. He is something broader and more profound, an archetype. He is a symbolic pattern, a recurring character in the human imagination that appears under different names and in different cultures. He is the essence of the forest spirit, not a specific lord of the hunt or the vine. To reduce him to a single-named deity is to miss his universal power. He is a symbol of a process, the cycle of life, death, and rebirth, not a personage with a fixed story. This is why you find his face in Christian churches, Hindu temples, and Islamic palaces, because the idea he represents is bigger than any one religion. Perhaps the most tempting error is to see him only as a benign, gentle nature spirit. His leafy smile can seem friendly, but many carvings, especially the disgorging heads, carry a raw, almost fearsome power. He represents nature in its entirety, which includes both the gentle spring rain and the destructive storm, the nourishing soil and the consuming rot. He is not just about birth, but about the entire cycle, which necessarily includes decay and death. To see him only as a kind grandfather of the forest is to ignore the wild, untamable, and sometimes terrifying force of nature that he truly embodies. By clearing away these misconceptions, we can see the green man more clearly, not as a simple answer, but as a beautiful, complicated question carved in stone. This enduring debate over his identity is not a problem to be solved, but the very source of his power. The green man thrives in the liminal space, the threshold where clear definitions blur and opposites meet. He is neither purely pagan nor entirely Christian, but a bridge between the two, a testament to the way human belief is layered, not erased. He stands at the crossroads of the wildwood and the cultivated field, reminding us that civilization is just a clearing in an ancient forest. His form dissolves the most fundamental boundary of all, the line we draw between ourselves and the rest of the living world. He is the human who is also the plant, the stone that breathes, the conscious mind flowering into unconscious nature. This profound ambiguity is what makes him immortal. A symbol with a single fixed meaning can become a relic, locked in a specific time and place, but a symbol that is a question, an open door, remains forever relevant. Each generation that encounters him is invited to project its own hopes, fears, and longings onto his leafy countenance. The medieval Christian saw the promise of resurrection. The Romantic poet saw the soul of a lost wilderness. The modern environmentalist sees an icon of ecological urgency. The seeker on a spiritual path sees a map for inner integration. He is a mirror, and what we see in him tells us more about ourselves than about the stone from which he is carved. His true story is not found in a dusty manuscript or a forgotten myth. It is the ongoing, living story of our own changing relationship with nature, spirit, and the wild, untamed parts of our own souls. The mystery is the message. From ancient pagan forests to the highest arches of Gothic cathedrals, this enigmatic face has worn many masks. He is both a whisper of the old gods and a sermon in stone, a shapeshifter whose true meaning is not carved in history, but reflected in the eyes of the beholder. His journey is a testament to the enduring human need to find a face in the wilderness, to understand the great green cycle of life, death, and rebirth. He was never erased, only transformed. moving from the horned god Cernunnos to the foliate head of the church, and now to a powerful icon for our ecological age. The green man defies a single label because he represents something more profound than any one faith, a primal archetype that lives within us all. Look for him the next time you visit an old church or walk in a deep forest. What do you see? Share your thoughts and any green man photos you've found in the comments below.